Welcome, I'm Christine with the Wine Education Institute. Today, we are diving deep into a spirit that is very well known and often misunderstood for its simplicity, vodka. Where the word vodka originates from is hotly contested. Some say it comes from the Russian word vodka or the Slavic word voda. While we may never have a conclusive agreement, it shows that this spirit has been made and is culturally important in many places. After all, when spirits come off the still, they all are essentially vodka, because at its core, it is a spirit made from ingredients of agricultural origin that has been distilled and diluted with water. Vodka, which in many places is legally classified as a neutral spirit, is more than just heating a still and getting high amounts of ethanol. Crafting a truly outstanding vodka, one that achieves both purity and subtle character, is a highly technical process. From this artistry, vodka can be enjoyed straight or mixed seamlessly into a cocktail. Let's dive in. In this video, we will explore the raw materials, the advanced distillation techniques, the crucial post-distillation decisions, and the subtle differences that define the styles of vodka available today. We'll also explore the legal frameworks governing vodka in the US and the EU. Let's begin our quest for purity. Unlike many other spirits, vodka can be made from a massive range of ingredients. Nearly every jurisdiction allows vodka to be made from any raw material of agricultural origin that is safe for human consumption. Potatoes and grains may be most commonly seen, but vodka can be made from grapes or practically anything that we can get a sugary liquid from. The choice of raw material impacts the final product and is driven by two main factors. First, the need for a large, commercially viable supply, and the second is the goal of the brand manager. Traditionally, in Eastern Europe, the original home of vodka, raw materials like barley, rye, wheat, and potato are readily available, and so over time have been associated with high-quality vodkas. Using grapes as a base material is a notable exception that has been growing in the industry as a practice. Producers aiming for inexpensive vodka often source the least expensive materials available in their market, which might be molasses or corn. For these brands, the raw materials are typically not highlighted in marketing. Most raw materials used, particularly grains and potatoes, contain starch. To convert this starch to sugar, producers today usually rely on exogenous enzymes rather than the traditional malted grains. Next, let's look at fermentation. For nearly all other spirit categories, distillers select yeast strains to maximize desirable flavor and aroma compounds. But for neutral spirits like vodka, distillers seek out yeasts that produce very low levels of aromas. Cultured and carefully selected yeast is the norm. The definition of vodka centers on achieving extremely high alcoholic strength. The higher the strength, the closer we get to neutral. In US, vodka must be distilled to 95% ABV. The EU's requirement is even higher at 96% ABV or 190 proof. Achieving these strengths is only possible using column stills, equipped with a high number of plates. Now, this can happen in either a single or a multi-column still. Some distillers will distill further after this point to achieve even greater purity. This might involve complex equipment like hydroselection or demethylizing columns. This specialized equipment is very expensive and often only used by large, well-funded distilleries. Some smaller distillers who purchase neutral spirit may use a hybrid still or a pot still to further refine their product. Despite this focus on neutrality, neutral spirits are not all identical. Subtle differences in aromas and textures exist. Distilling an outstanding neutral spirit demands immense skill, as distillers must carefully adjust the concentration of individual fractions by the tiniest amounts. By setting the column to full reflux, they can separate remaining undesirable fractions, such as heads and tails, to create a much softer textured vodka. And a quick note on marketing, you might often hear brands boasting about the number of times their vodka has been distilled. While this often is an attempt to communicate pure, clean spirit, the exact meaning of these statements can be unclear to the consumer. Post-distillation operations or finishings are critical in shaping your final vodka. While it could be as simple as adding water, most vodka distillers use several techniques to achieve their desired style. Water plays a key role in vodka, as it can make up to 60% of the liquid in a bottle. This is because we need to bring our highly rectified spirit down from that 95-96% to the legally defined bottling strength. This will be done prior to bottling. Because of the lack of congeners in our high-proof spirit, dissolved minerals or other elements in untreated water could overwhelm vodka's delicate texture. Distillers go to great lengths to process their water, using methods like filtration, UV light, ion exchange, or reverse osmosis, striving for a liquid that is as close to pure water as possible. Now, this highly processed water can have a very unusual, almost slippery mouthfeel compared to just municipal water. Many brands may also reference natural sources like spring water in their marketing. The reality is that either way you're going, we are tending to highly treat our water prior to use. Filtration is important for vodka, as consumers expect a visually clear, water-white product. There are a couple different ways to achieve this. First being chill-filtration. This is almost universally practiced in vodka. Vodka is typically served chilled, and if it was not filtered, it could become cloudy when cooled or diluted. During chill filtration, temperatures may be dropped as low as 14 degrees Fahrenheit before particulates are removed by very tiny pore-sized filters. Another option or additional option is activated charcoal filtration. This also is commonly practiced in vodka. Activated charcoal effectively traps harsh textural elements and can strip away congeners to achieve textural smoothness, purity, and neutrality. Once dilution levels are set and vodka is filtered, some producers will adjust with additives for textural purposes. Sweetness is the most common adjustment by adding sugar or syrup. Small amounts of sugar might not even be noticed for sweetness, but can bring balance against alcoholic heat or give a silky mouthfeel. Glycerol may also be used to modify texture, making the spirit feel softer or oilier. However, the types and amounts of additives permitted are tightly controlled by law. Speaking of law, the production of vodka is controlled by distinct legal frameworks, and we'll look specifically at the US and the EU. Most distillers globally tend to follow one of these two frameworks. As a reminder, US has a distillation strength of 95% ABV at minimum, and EU has 96%. But the US has a higher minimum bottling strength of 40%, whereas EU is lower at 37.5% minimum ABV. US law has no specific requirements for labeling the raw material source. In contrast, EU legislation requires that if raw materials other than grain or potato were used, it must be stated on the label. US law has very clear and limited restriction on additives, permitting water, a maximum of 2 grams per liter of sugar, and a maximum of 1 gram per liter of citric acid. The EU allows for water and up to 8 grams per liter of sugar to round out the final taste, and also allows flavorings that are present in distillates obtained from the fermented raw materials. This additive legislation is deliberately more obscure in the EU, resulting from negotiations, allowing for some character and the use of certain additives. In contrast, US law is much clearer regarding additives. Both jurisdictions specifically mention charcoal filtration in their legislation as well. While often seen as just neutral, vodkas do differ from one another, sometimes aromatically or texturally. It's easiest to group them into 2 broad categories, neutral and characterful. Neutral styles aim for ultimate aromatic and textural simplicity and purity. On the nose, the main aroma typically is ethanol. These vodkas are not notably mouth-filling, but done well, avoid feeling watery and can be smooth and delicate. The finish ideally is clean, short, and neutral. Achieving this level of purity is technically difficult, and many vodkas that attempt this style may retain some coarseness. Characterful vodkas possess distinct aromas or textures that usually originate from the raw material. While these spirits still meet the legal limits for vodka, they might have a creamy, mouth-filling texture or, conversely, a slight sharpness. When tasting these, the raw material contribution becomes identifiable, which is why distillers often advertise this ingredient on their labels. Some common raw materials that can influence the final spirits may be potato, which is often the easiest to identify, which has earthy, root-like aromas, sometimes with a smoky or sulfur characteristic. They can have a rich and mouth-filling texture. Rye imparts a spicy character, almost like a lemony pepper type of bite, and wheat gives a nice soft texture with bread and dough aromas. Corn can give a soft, rounded mouthfeel with aromas from our corn base, and barley can offer cereal characteristics reminiscent of malt whiskeys with a lean palate feel. Let's review. Vodka production is a journey defined by precision in distillation and post-distillation. The process begins with a massive range of raw materials of agricultural origin, from the traditional potato and grains like wheat and rye to materials like grapes and molasses, each source contributing to the spirit's potential for subtle character. The definition of vodka centers on achieving an extremely high alcoholic strength, which requires column stills to reach at least 95% ABV in the US and 96% in the EU. Post-distillation plays an important role in maintaining neutrality. Water, which makes up to nearly 60% of the final product, may be treated through various methods, some like reverse osmosis or ion exchange, to remove impurities and avoid overwhelming the spirit's delicate texture. Techniques like chill-filtration and activated charcoal filtration are essential for achieving the expected visual clarity and the textural smoothness by stripping away unwanted congeners. Finally, the spirit is shaped by distinct legal frameworks, setting strict limits on distillation strength, bottling strength, and additives. Ultimately, whether a distiller opts for the purity of a neutral style or chooses to express the raw material's distinct textures and aromas in a characterful vodka, the final product represents a highly refined spirit. Understanding this production journey reveals that vodka is anything but simple. Thank you for joining me. Cheers.